Oh, it might be our husbands. He's here.
I take orders from a bitch at home, so I'm not about to take orders from a bitch at work. Well, Mrs. Ledbetter, we can discuss your performance evaluation perhaps at a hotel room at the Ramada Inn. I was prepared for comments like these from my manager and the people I managed. When the only women in the front office were secretaries, I was elated to be hired as one of the first female managers at the Goodyear Tire Factory in 1979. It was my dream job. I know tire factory manager doesn't sound very glamorous, but I was born in a house with no running water or electricity in Possum Trot, Alabama. Possum Trot's about as glamorous as, well, there's nothing glamorous about Possum Trot. It's called Possum Trot for a reason. Even though for years I faced daily sexual harassment and discrimination, I knew things would get better. However, what I was not prepared for is that one day I went to my car and found that someone had left a torn piece of paper on my window. After working for Goodyear Tire Factory for almost 20 years, I saw that every male manager, including those hired after me, made around $15,000 a year more than I did. Right then, I was tired of playing by the perceived rules. I was tired of believing things would get better. I went to court. In 1970 and 1998, I sued Goodyear Tire Corporation under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Now, this is important to remember, y'all. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act says no employer can discriminate against an employee on the basis of sex, race, color, national origin, or religion. I argued, or rather my lawyers argued, that poor performance evaluations, remember the Ramada Inn, resulted in lower pay than my male co-workers. And the court agreed with me and awarded me $3.5 million in back pay and damages, which the district judge later reduced to $360,000. Then Goodyear appealed. They said my statute of limitations had run out. Oh, okay, I see I lost some of y'all there. See, statute of limitations refers to the time you have to take legal action against someone. Meaning even if what they did was wrong or illegal, they didn't have to pay. Because my time to take action against them, in this case 180 days or 6 months, had run out. My lawyers argued that my statute of limitations started over with every paycheck I received. And the court agreed with Goodyear. And my case was reversed. But that's not where the story ends. Or even really begins. It's somewhere in the middle. To understand this story, you have to go back to 1956, Harvard Law School. Ruth Ginsburg, as she was known then. Later, she'd go by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But most people just call her RBG. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We invite you to listen to the story of one woman who will go down in herstory, notoriously.
6 years after women first gained entry into America's oldest university, only 9 in a class of 500 didn't exactly signal diversity. But one of those 9 would go on to become judge of the Supreme, something for women, which was merely a dream. just not to be defined by her sexuality. A tiny woman with conviction, but didn't like to attract attention. She fought for justice through the courts so human rights wouldn't come up short.
Because you can't spell truth without Ruth, notoriously. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Notorious RBG. We present Exhibit A, Job Hunting. In 1956, Ruth Ginsburg found herself as one of 9 women in a class of 500 at Harvard Law School. And she eventually found herself as top of the class. But after 2 years, she asked for a hardship transfer to Columbia Law School because her husband Marty, also a Harvard graduate himself, got a job in New York City. Dean Griswold, I don't understand. Other high-performing students have been allowed to complete their Harvard degree at Columbia.
Well, those students have unique cases.
Marty survived cancer, but the doctors say it could always return. He and my daughter will need me if it does. It's the only reason I'm asking.
Well, then maybe a Harvard degree should be your focus. So, in 1959, Ruth Bader Ginsburg graduated top of her class at Columbia Law. And as she began to interview at several corporate law firms, she was rejected by every single one of them, despite having graduated top of her class and being recommended by all of her professors. She was even rejected by a firm where she had been a summer intern at. We already have a woman. As Ruth thought, she had 3 strikes against her.
I'm a woman, a mother of a 4-year-old, and a Jew.
We present Exhibit B.
Sweden.
With a little bit of a push from one of her professors, Gerald Gunther, Ruth eventually landed a job as a law clerk for a federal judge. After a few years of clerking, she was invited to co-author a book on civil law in Sweden.
I'm not sure I can find Sweden on a map. But I'm almost 30, my daughter is in 1st grade, and I've never lived alone in my life. I'll do it.
In Sweden, women have begun to enter the workforce in much larger numbers than in America. However, even in Sweden, women still had 2 jobs while men had 1.
While Ruth was settling in and observing the Swedish justice system, another American arrived, actress Sherry Finkbein. Finkbein was pregnant, but seeking an abortion on the advice from her doctor. Abortion was still illegal in America, and only Sweden would allow her to end her pregnancy.
Ruth was also assigned to several judges to observe, one of whom was 8 months pregnant. She also noticed that 20 to 25% of all law students in Sweden were women. In the US, it was less than 5%.
I feel like I'm a Martian on a planet with options. For women who want to work and not live berserk beneath defined roles, keeping gender under control. I ask no favor of my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they keep their feet off our necks.
As someone who didn't like making a splash, Ruth observed these events in Sweden with awe. It would be a few years before she realized how much Sweden changed her life. We present Exhibit C, Professor Ginsburg. There were only 14 women in the US who were law professors in 1963, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg was one of them. However, the salary was low, but the dean of the school kindly explained.
We already have this guy, and we can't pay you as much as him because he's got 5 children. And you have a husband who earns a good salary.
John is a bachelor. Is he paid more?
Yes.
Ruth kept her head down, and over the next 9 years, she would
Co-found the Women's Rights Law Report, the first law journal to focus exclusively on women's rights. Teach the first women and the law class.
become the first female tenured professor at Columbia Law School.
Co-authored the first law school casebook on sex discrimination.
Have a second child. Her students didn't even know she was pregnant.
Oh, and while Ruth was doing all this, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 accidentally added sex discrimination to its list of banned employment activities.
As a professor, Ruth was beginning to create a name for herself, even though she didn't seek it. Her hair is always tied back. She speaks very slowly but precisely. She's brilliant. She's distant with her students and often reserved, but she's the best teacher I've ever had.
Pay attention. This is important to understand. A checks and balances rule this land. We have a three-branch authority, where each branch is weighed equally. The legislative branch, Congress, creates the law. The executive branch, President, carries out the law. But guys, gals, and non-binary pals, the courts are the law's rationales. The Constitution is a living piece of paper. The courts determine if you break it. Understand, the court does not create the law. It only determines if there is a flaw. It is still up to Congress to make changes to ensure no people end up in cages. We present Exhibit D, the ACLU and the hit list.
The American Civil Liberties Union, better known as the ACLU, is an independent, not-for-profit organization whose mission is to defend civil liberties and constitutional rights.
In 1971, the ACLU took a case from a woman named Sally Reed to the Supreme Court. Sally Reed's husband was abusive and left the family. But when their son committed suicide, it was the husband who was the executor of the estate because he was a man. It was the law. Sally Reed's case was important because the court had to determine if women's rights were protected under the Equal Protection Act of the U.S. Constitution. In other words, would they continue to treat women as second-class citizens?
During this time, Ruth began to split her time between teaching and volunteering as a lawyer for the ACLU. She knew that the right case could come along and begin to turn the gender discrimination tide. Kiki, you're gonna want to see this.
I told you, Monty, I don't read tax law.
You're gonna want to read this one. Charles Morris is a traveling salesman who lives alone with his 89-year-old mother. When he travels for work, he pays someone to take care of her. He was denied a tax deduction because such deductions are only available to women, widowers, and the husbands of incapacitated women.
It never occurred to the government a man would choose to lend a hand. Let's take it. At first glance, the case was small. The IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, the tax people, denied Charles Moritz no more than $600 in tax deductions for his mother's care. But the Ginsburgs saw this as a perfect example of how gender bias hurts both men and women. It could also set a model for future cases.
Ruth knew that the Charles Moritz case, paired with Sally Reed's case, could show everyone that gender bias hurts everyone. She sent the ACLU the documents she and Martin prepared for the Charles Moritz case.
The national conscience has been awakened. Biological differences between the sexes are mistaken and bear no link to the abilities of an administrator's duties. The pedestal upon which women have been placed has been revealed as a cage.
With Ruth's help, the ACLU won Sally Reed's case. This was the Supreme Court's first ruling that sex-based classifications violated the Constitution. A year later, the Ginsburg took the Charles Moritz case to court. It was the first time Ruth argued in front of a judge. Well, not one, but 3 judges.
No pressure. The guy on the Griswold, the number 4 guy at the Department of Justice. In the end, all 4 justices ruled in favor of Morris, and the Ginsburgs won their case. However, when Griswold lost, he protested to the Supreme Court, saying the Supreme Court justices
Had to overrule the Morris case, otherwise there would be hundreds of federal laws deemed unconstitutional.
the Supreme Court denied his request. But Griswold was kind enough to include all laws and regulations that treated women and men differently in what was called Appendix E. Ruth saw Appendix E for exactly what it was, a hit list. With the Reed and the Morris case as a basis, Ruth would battle gender equality in the courts, and the hit list was her operation plan.
Throughout the 1970s, as a lawyer for the ACLU and co-founder of the Women's Rights Project, Ruth would visit the Supreme Court and write several documents for 12 different cases in her battle for gender equality, whether they be female or male defendants.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry. Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court.
The first case she argued involved a female Air Force lieutenant husband who had been denied the same housing, medical, and dental benefits as other military spouses, all because the female Air Force lieutenant was a woman.
There were also 4 pregnancy cases where the Supreme Court said it was wrong for school teachers to be forced off their jobs halfway through their pregnancies, but the court refused to say that denying women disability insurance and pension plans was wrong because, theoretically, pregnancy was voluntary.
Another case of forced sterilization of a black woman, 2 cases regarding women on juries, and
The Near Beer case, where Oklahoma frat boys protested the constitutionality that in their state, women could buy alcohol at 21 when men had to wait until they were 18.
Actually, maybe not by that long.
which opened.
In the end, Ruth thought that the Thirsty Boys case was a little embarrassing, but took it anyway. It ended up being a legal landmark. It was the first time the court applied a test that determined if a law discriminated on the basis of sex. We present Exhibit D. Judge Ginsburg.
You're right, Carol. Like a card-carrying member of the ACLU is going to be a moderate judge.
I'm telling you, Dave, she was one of my best students. I genuinely believe that she will be open-minded and detached, knowing a judge's limitations. In fact, I will bet you $5 that she will be widely seen as the most modest, independent, and thoughtful judge on the bench.
I will take that deal.
The U.S. Supreme Court only takes about 75 cases out of the 10,000 it is asked to hear, meaning that appeals courts are often the last stop on a case's journey, and the judges on those benches often have the final say in law. In 1979, the same year that Lily Ledbetter was starting as a manager at Goodyear Tire Factory, Ruth applied to be a judge at 2 of those appeals courts, but was denied because she applied to 2 courts at the same time, which no one told her she couldn't do.
However, her supporters wouldn't have it. Letters poured in from attorneys all over the country. One who said that if Ruth was not chosen, it would be a slap in the face to female lawyers everywhere.
So, within a month, President Jimmy Carter nominated Ruth Bader Ginsburg for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. Ruth was worried that her women's rights work would be held against her. One representative, John Ashbrook, complained that she had militant feminist interpretations.
I don't say women's rights, I say the constitutional principle of equal citizenship stature of both men and women.
Ruth was confirmed unanimously on June 18, 1980.
Dear Gerald, I thought you might enjoy this clipping from the Washington Post. It is with mixed emotions that I tell you that you were right. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a solid centrist judge. Here's your $5. Regard, Go.
1993. 37 years after Ruth Bader Ginsburg found herself as one of 9 women in a class of 500.
34 years after she graduated top of her class at Columbia Law but could barely get a job. 32 years after she observed the possibilities to women in Sweden.
20 years after she argued her first case in front of the 9 justices of the Supreme Court.
13 years after she became a federal judge. 12 years after the first woman was appointed to the Supreme Court.
Tonight, we begin with a special report from the White House and an announcement in which the president said will affect every American in time. After looking at over 40 candidates, President Clinton has selected his nomination for the next U.S. Supreme Court judge, and her name is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And the details of these. She is 60 years old, from Brooklyn, New York, a pioneering lawyer who spent much of her career at the ACLU and head of the Women's Rights Project, but in recent years has gained a reputation of being a modest judge who, as the president said, will bring a fair and balanced and wise choices to the bench. He also said that he thinks Ruth Bader Ginsburg will be a force of consensus at the U.S. Supreme Court, just as she has been at the Court of Appeals.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg was confirmed as a Supreme Court judge and took office on August 10, 1993. She became known as a moderate judge who valued peace among the justices. She felt her obligation was to define liberty for all, not mandate each judge's own moral code.
As a new justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was now allowed into the conference, a room where only the justices of the Supreme Court are allowed. No clerks, no secretaries, not even a message bearer.
A few days after oral arguments,
That's the fancy name for when you go in front of the judges and state your case.
the judges meet for the conference and discuss all the cases they've heard. And they each speak their piece in order of seniority. And then they vote to determine the opinion of the court.
The opinion of the court is the majority opinion, where at least 5 out of the 9 judges vote the same way.
Those not in the majority are part of the minority and will create a dissenting opinion, a losing opinion. The losing opinion...
The dissenting opinion.
Yes, sorry, the dissenting opinion. The dissenting opinion states why those justices disagree with the majority and will be filed away with the rest of the paperwork about that case. Dissenting opinions appeal to the reason of future generations to reconsider a court decision. 2007. Years after I first went to court, I found myself staring at the Corinthian columns of the highest court in America. As I stepped into the courtroom and I looked around at everyone in there, lawyers, clerks, members of the public, the press, and the 9 justices, I knew there was only one person who would understand me, Justice Ginsburg.
14 years after Ruth Bader Ginsburg was appointed to the Supreme Court, she found herself the only woman on the bench to hear the case of Ledbetter versus Goodyear Tire Corporation.
2 years prior, her friend and the first woman appointed to the bench, Sandra O'Connor, had decided to retire. So once again, Ruth found herself as one of 9.
Goodyear and Lily Ledbetter's attorneys argued their cases, answered questions posed by the judges, and it was over in an hour.
Like every other conference, we'll never know exactly what was said among those judges.
But we can imagine. After years of litigating and arguing in front of this very court, years of teaching future judges and future attorneys, years of fighting for human rights, we can imagine Ruth Bader Ginsburg putting on those old professor glasses and teaching those boys a thing or two. Because the court ruled in favor of Lily Ledbetter.
That's not what happened.
What?
That's not what happened in the case the court sided with Goodyear.
What are you talking about?
She's right.
Sorry. What are you two doing?
Lily Ledbetter lost her case.
What? No, wait, actually illegal.
Yeah, but technically.
I don't give a shit about technicalities. Yeah, she didn't sue within 180 days. But you can't sue if you don't know what's happening. And if you sue without a fully baked case, you're more likely to lose. Yes, well, according to the law. Fuck the law! Sorry, but fuck it. Title 7 says no discriminating against on the basis of sex, color, religion, national origin, or race. No, they got it wrong!
But why are you getting so upset?
Why am I getting so upset? Lily Ledbetter worked for Goodyear for almost 20 years. She did the same work as her male coworkers, and they treated her like a second-class citizen. She's not a second-class citizen. I'm not a second-class citizen. You're not a second-class citizen. Neither are you. No one should be discriminated against on the basis of their religion or the color or the lack of genitalia. And the courts should know this. They desegregated the South. They gave women choice over their bodies. They are the check to our balance. They are supposed to protect us! And what you did was wrong. And we shouldn't allow it.
Just because it's legal doesn't make it right.
What? What did you say?
Just because it's legal doesn't make it right.
Of course. That's what this story is about. You're right. Lily Ledbetter lost her case. The court ruled in favor of Goodyear, or at least a majority of the court did.
Business-friendly and conservative Judge Alito announced the opinion from the bench. He said that Lily Ledbetter should have filed a case for discrimination within 180 days of each paycheck. And because they were the majority, those 5 men decided what was legal. But what happened next rarely happened, or up to that point anyway.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a tiny woman with conviction, but didn't like to attract attention. A woman who thought that a peace among the justices was the most important thing for the court. Decided to announce her dissenting opinion from the bench, the losing opinion. She decided to attract attention. There is no other way to say this, but your words are insidious. Members of this court do not understand how woman is less favored than man. With this decision, you say, women will not get equal pay unless you sue early, whether or not you surely know if your claim is true. Never mind the snowball decisions where Lily couldn't make her commissions. This is not the first time the court limited Title VII support. Once again, the ball is in Congress's court for legislation to correct this frugal report.
As we mentioned, written dissenting opinions express the opinion of the minority and are standard practice for the Supreme Court. But announcing the dissenting opinion aloud from the bench was like a scream for reconsideration.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote plenty of dissents in the past and felt that dissenting too often will weaken the force of a dissent when it becomes important to write. However, when the Supreme Court term ended that year, it went down as the term and indeed the case where she gained her voice.
Because of Justice Ginsburg's action, the public, the press, and members of Congress took notice of a poorly defined law. Lilly Ledbetter and other women were called to testify in front of Congress. You heard some of her testimony earlier today. Bills were introduced to amend Title VII. A potential Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was a hot topic in 2008 on the presidential campaign between Barack Obama and John McCain. We present Exhibit G, January 2009.
United States, accompanied by Mrs. Lilly Ledbetter.
The bill that was signed into law will allow people 180 days from the time they learn, basically, that they're being discriminated against to file their charges with the EOC.
This is a wonderful day. First of all, it is fitting that the very first bill that I signed, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Restoration Act, that it is upholding one of this nation's founding principles, that we are all created equal, and each deserve a chance to pursue our own version of happiness.
In the 10 years since the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was introduced, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has continued to give oral dissents when she thought it absolutely necessary, including 4 times during the 2010-2011 term. During her time on the bench, she has beaten cancer 3 times, bruised 3 ribs, lost her beloved husband Marty, and only missed a day of work. She is the 4th oldest U.S. Supreme Court judge ever. She turned 86 this past March, and has no plans to step down or slow down anytime soon, which has garnered her the nickname Notorious RBG.